Sully here, the retired tanker yanker. Welcome to Transitions, my YouTube channel. If you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe to my channel. Please give me a thumbs up and like my channel. Share it with your friends. Today's topic is something that is kind of near and dear to my heart as an Irish American and as somebody who has roots in the coal country. My father was from Monterey City, Pennsylvania, and he was a coal cracker. When his father passed away, his mother, who was a school teacher, she actually had a college degree in library science. She was a school teacher. She was also a devout Lutheran. And my father's people were staunch Catholics. And Grandmom Sophie was kind of afraid that her spinster sisters-in-law were going to rescue the kids and make them Catholic. And that was something that she was dead set against. So she put all the kids except one into the Lutheran home in Philadelphia, where she hoped to also move and become a teacher. However, there was a law in Pennsylvania at the time saying that a woman with dependent children couldn't be a school teacher, despite the fact that this was a college-educated woman. Now, in Schuylkill County, college-educated women were few and far between, and they kind of winked at the laws. I mean, prohibition was considered a nasty rumor in Schuylkill County, and so Grandmom Sophie actually worked as a domestic. She did house cleaning for rich people in Chestnut Hill. But I'm getting off the topic here. As I said, I'm the son of a coal cracker, and I actually lived in Schuylkill County for about 18 months. I lived in a place called Hexerville, which has one of the few active mines still remaining in Schuylkill County, a place where they're still digging anthracite out of the ground. And I used to, on the road between Minersville and Hexerville, I used to pass this old ancient stone building, stone house. And my roommate at the time, my then girlfriend, we don't talk anymore, but more about that later. She told me that it was rumored that that house was the meeting place for the Molly Maguires. And Hexerville had an annual Irish festival. In fact, I didn't even have to pay to get in. If I wanted, I could just sit and listen to the music in my backyard, but I wanted to be where the action is, so I would walk over to the Clover Firehouse Fairgrounds and pay whatever to get in and drink Yingling and eat blinis and colcannon and all that other good Skook soul food. And there was always Irish music playing there, and as you know, I love Irish music. And there was usually a couple guys performing there, dressed as the old-time miners, and they sang the old miners' songs. And there was usually more than a few of the descendants of the Molly Maguires in the audience. So who exactly were the Molly Maguires? Well, they were basically a group of Irish Americans who were members of the society known as the Ancient Order of Hibernians, which was an Irish social group in the United States, and was recognized as a social group. But because of the number of coal miners of Irish birth in Schuylkill County and the environs, Carbon County, Lehigh County, Berks County, there was a lot of labor unrest. There was also opposition to the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln. And these people just were trying to make a living and wanted to be left alone. Now, between the years of 1877 and 1879, 20 members of this group were executed. And apparently, all these people were supposedly implicated in murders. Although their guilt is basically a question. Now, it was during the Civil War that Irish immigrant miners were supposedly responsible for killing a number of mine supervisors and mine executives who were members of the local draft boards. And whether or not the Mollies carried out any of these murders, it's really more considered fabricated evidence than anything else. There was a man named Frank Gowan who was president of the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad, and he was buying up the mines so that there would be plenty of coal available for the trains, and of course coal to send out to Pennsylvania or over to Bethlehem to make steel for the rails and for the railroad engines. But we have to flash forward to the early 70s when Gowan hired the Pinkerton detective agencies, and he wanted somebody from Pinkerton to infiltrate the Mollies. And there was an Irish-born Pinkerton man named James McParland. He was from Ulster, and he was an Irish Catholic, and he worked undercover. And it was he who testified against the Molly Maguires as saying that these people were guilty of the murders. Now, the day of the rope, also called Black Thursday, was June 21st, 1877. On that day, 6 members of the Molly Maguires were hanged at the prison in Pottsville, and 4 members of the Molly Maguires were hanged at the prison in Mauch Chunk, the town which is presently known as Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. And basically it was at the behest of Franklin Gowan that these executions were carried out. One of the persons executed was a fellow named Alex Campbell. And basically, Campbell's crime was running a saloon. When he first came to America, probably in the late 1850s, early 1860s, he established a public house in Tamaqua, Pennsylvania, and later opened one up near Lansford, Pennsylvania. And one of the more infamous mines was the Lansford mine, and it was operated by a Welshman named John Jones. Jones did not like hiring Irish Catholics. Most of the Irish that he hired were Protestants, and they were treated fairly well, but the Irish Catholics that he hired, he treated like dirt. They were working sometimes 16-hour shifts, 7 days a week, and they were lucky if they made $1 a day. And even more of an insult was Jones required the miners to furnish their own shovels and pickaxes and safety lights, and he sold them to them at the company store, and it would probably cost a man a month's wages just to buy the tool that he needed to do his job. And the only place where they could get food was at the company store, because Jones paid his miners, at least his Irish Catholic miners, in scrip, not in cash. And the only place the scrip was accepted was at the company store, where prices were sometimes double and even triple what they were in the regular stores, and the miners had no recourse. So, apparently there was a lot of resentment towards old Blackjack Jones, and one day he found himself shot to death. And it was McParland who implicated Donahue, Kelly, Doyle, and Campbell in that murder. Now, did any of these men participate in the murder? Possibly. In fact, Edward Kelly actually took credit for it, even though evidence later proved that he was nowhere near Jones at the time of his murder. But the four were executed, and on the day of his execution, Alex Campbell in his cell, protesting his innocence to the very end, rubbed his hand in the mud of the prison cell, slapped it on the wall, left a handprint, and said, "This is proof of my innocence. As long as this handprint is there, people will know the shame of this county for executing an innocent man," or words to that effect. Now, I really don't believe in ghosts and in haunted houses and haunted places. But if you go to a tour of the old Mauch Chunk prison in Jim Thorpe, part of the tour is cell number 17. And that handprint is still on the wall. Now, there's no real explanation for it. They've tried to remove it, even going so far as to take out the wall, and yet the handprint still appears. But it was a case of the coal and railroad oligarchs' control over labor. Now, the steelworkers too. If you remember in 1892, the Homestead Works near Pittsburgh, there was a strike of steelworkers there, and the Pinkertons were called in there, and they mowed down the strikers. That was at the orders of a fellow named Henry Frick, who was the general manager of Andrew Carnegie's steel empire. Andrew Carnegie happened to be in Scotland at the time, and when he learned of this, he was outraged. Shortly after the strike of 1892, there was an attempt made on Frick's life, and he did survive it. But no sooner did Carnegie return from Scotland to Pittsburgh when he fired Henry Frick. And 8 years later, after the assassination of President McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt became president, and he set up the Bustys Trusts. He took the business oligarchs to task, to people like Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan, and he promised a square deal for American people. The ideas were considered progressive, almost radical for the day, to actually give labor a voice. There was also a coal strike during TR's administration, and TR became the first American president to intervene in a strike. He called for arbitration. The mine owners insisted that no member of the United Mine Workers participate in these negotiations. TR got around it by bringing the head of the Pullman Railroad Car Workers Union in as what he called a social consultant. But the shame of the execution of the Molly Maguires and the shame of the treatment of the coal workers of the mid to late 19th century is just an example of the control that the owners of companies, the rich, wealthy interests, had over the workers of the day. And you started to see more and more of a change towards workers. You had people like Henry Diston, who he was pretty strict about his rules, but he also paid his workers a fair wage. I mean, at a time when a working man was making $2.50 a day, Henry Diston was paying his workers $5 a day. He provided them low-cost housing, gave them the option of taking their pay in cash or scrip, and the prices he charged at his company stores were fair, but the people were allowed to go elsewhere and buy the things. So the company store that Henry Diston ran actually competed with the local merchants. Henry Diston had one rule: if you're ever caught in a saloon, you're fired. To this day, the land that Henry Diston owned and willed to the city of Philadelphia on his death stipulates that no license for any establishment that sells alcoholic beverage shall be granted. So there's a section in Tacony known as the Diston Estate where you won't find a bar, you won't find a state store, you won't find a six-pack store. Grocery stores aren't allowed to sell beer or wine. It's just part of the will. Restaurants can't serve beer or wine. It's just the way it is. But getting back to the Molly Maguires, it was the treatment of the Molly Maguires that probably started to wake people up in this country about the mistreatment of workers. Now, there are people who say that the Molly Maguires never even existed. That it was a secret society. Well, they did exist. And to this day, members of the Ancient Order of Hibernians celebrate June 21st, not as the first day of summer, but as a day of mourning, a day of remembrance of the 10 people who were executed in 1877. The 6 that were executed in Pottsville and the 4 that were executed in Mauch Chunk. Now, earlier this year, actually it was probably sometime last year, I wrote a song which was inspired by the Molly Maguires, and in particularly by Alice Campbell. I called that song The Day of the Rope, and one of the first videos I made for YouTube, when I still wasn't quite sure what I was doing, I made that video. And as of today, considering I only have 16 subscribers at this point, that video has gotten like 160 views. Now, I can't imagine all my subscribers have watched it 10 times. I was still learning how to do things, and the quality of it wasn't all that good. I didn't have editing software. I just made a recording on my phone and uploaded it directly. And so what I'm going to do is make a new video of that song. Maybe some of you hadn't had a chance to see that video because you'd have to go so far back in my collection that you probably never got to it. And probably just got around through shares. And as I said, I would appreciate it if you would share this video, if for nothing else, to get that song out there, to let people hear that song that I wrote, that song that I'm very proud of. I did research that song very well. I did look into the history of Alice Campbell and of the Molly Maguires. And while I don't know if everything that I read on the internet is the truth, because we really have no way of knowing how much is truth and how much is legend, but based on my research, everything I say in this song is as it happened. So, without further ado, I respectfully request that you turn your ear this way and give a listen to my song, The Day of the Rope. I'm not really crazy about the idea of making a second video for a song, although this is not unprecedented. But considering the topic of this video, I think it's fitting. This video, or the previous video I made for this song, currently has over 160 views, which for my channel probably could be considered viral. But given the topic of what I was discussing earlier, I think this is a pretty fitting song. Oh, me name is Alex Campbell, from Ireland I come. Hard and fast in Donegal, under John Bull's thumb. At the age of 23, it was then I went away to sail across the ocean, Pennsylvania Bay. I went to Carbon County, where the coal lay in the ground. If you were an Irishman, their employment could be found. But digging out the anthracite in the dark and the damp and cold was the curse of many a fine young lad who never lived to grow old. It was at a place called Lansford where John Jones ran a mine, and those Irish that he hired in his hellhole broke their spine. He paid them rip-gut wages, and the hours they were long. That's when the Mollies got together to try and right this wrong. Oh, Jack Donahue, Edward Kelly, Mick Doyle, and me. We all set out to hatch a plan to make those miners free. No one knows who did the deed, but the truth to you I'll tell. John Jones was shot, John Jones was killed, and took his place in hell. In the year of 77, on June the 21st day, down at that Mott Junk prison, the people knelt to pray for the souls of four proud Irishmen who would hang to set men free. Jack Donahue, Edward Kelly, Mick Doyle, and me. In my prison cell, number 17, it was there I did away, to be taken to the gallows, and there to meet my fate. I slept a muddy handprint on that dismal prison wall, to tell the world an innocent man from the gallows would soon fall. Now no gun did I fire, no dagger did I break, just for being a Molly Maguire, they laid me in my grave. But was I truly innocent? That's not for me to say. That handprint in my prison cell can still be seen today. Now, when it comes to things like the paranormal and ghosts and haunted houses and stuff like that, I am extremely skeptical. I really don't believe in the paranormal. But for some reason, Alice Campbell's handprint is still visible in prison cell number 17 at the old Mock Chunk prison, which is now the town of Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, despite repeated attempts to remove it. And no one can explain it. Although I'm sure there is a logical explanation, but it is what it is, I suppose. Anyway, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel, like this video, share it with your friends, and if you want to help me out here, become a sponsor, go to my Patreon page. There'll be a link below in the description. And also, if you have used equipment such as cameras, microphones, etc., that you wish to donate, you'll find my address in the description. Any donations would be appreciated. And if somebody is looking possibly to do a sponsorship to help me increase my subscriber count, that would be appreciated. Just drop me a line and I'll get in touch with you. So for transitions, this has been Sully, the retired tanker guy. Wishing you safe and happy travels.